Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 124 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we're going to talk about a listener Q&A. We're going to talk about the difference between creativity and innovation. And then last but not least, some really cool stuff we got in the works. The podcast has been going about every 2 weeks. We have one of our biggest meetings of our lives coming up here in a couple of weeks down south at 2 separate facilities. Really excited about some innovations that we've been working on and hope to share them with you soon. So I want to just touch base with that a minute and then talk about the processes, I think, which, for a lot of us out there, I want to encourage people to try and make new things and discover new areas. It's really cool. And it's one of those feelings that when you start to work on this stuff, it's just incredible, and love for others to experience the same as well. So ought to be a great podcast, a little bit of business, a little bit of long range shooting. Here we go. Before we get started, I would like to thank a couple sponsors, Krieger Barrel, maker of fine-cut rifle barrels. We use them here in all of our stainless steel custom-barreled rifles. They are out of Wisconsin, great company. They have a new program called KriegerDirect.com where you can log on and purchase your barrel and have it in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So if you want the best and you need it now, stop over to KriegerDirect.com. Also, I'd like to thank MDT, maker of fine chassis and supporter of the show. They make everything from the HNT to the new ACC Elite, which we're excited to get our hands on. New J. Allen or JAE 700, which is coming out soon as well. So if you would like to upgrade your rifle, custom or otherwise, and you would like to do it with a stock, stop over to MDT TAC. That's MDTTAC.com today. So to start the show off, I would like to say a quick thanks to Casey. Casey did reach out to us and ask a question about harmonics and difference between carbon and stainless. So he's building a hunting rifle, shorter range version. And Casey had asked, hey, when I was on your website there and doing some research, is carbon as stiff as steel? And this is a trick question, and I thought maybe it might be worth taking some time to talk about here on the podcast. The answer is yes and no, and it's one of the reasons why we have a specific Wolf Precision number 7 contour. So there's 2 or 3 things that go on with carbon barrels. Number one, they tout it as being stiffer than stainless. And by the way, I am not an expert. I'm not a barrel maker. I'm only repeating from asking those who are these questions and getting the answers. And the truth of the matter is, if a carbon barrel is to be as stiff or rigid as a stainless barrel, it has to be of the same weight. And so when you talk about a carbon barrel that weighs the same as one of our really heavy Krieger barrels, you could be talking about a barrel that's 1.5 inches to 2 inches in diameter. So you see where that sort of goes. So there's number one. Number two, we usually keep our barrels a little bit heavier and a little bit different cut to help mitigate the vibration. So there are barrel makers out there that make carbon barrels for hunting, and we hunt suppressor. We put a suppressor on them, and we've watched it here at the school with people bringing their own custom rifles all the time, and you can just watch this suppressor out there just bouncing up and down like a diving board every time they shoot. So they either remove way too much steel underneath, then wrap it with carbon, making quote-unquote the ultralight, and they cut the rifle's legs ability right out from underneath it. I mean, they won't be as accurate, have a lot of issues with loosening suppressors, to barrel whip, to harmonics, they're harder to control. It's just, all of these things that we want the rifles to do, when you let the pendulum swing too far the other way, you start to cause other issues that take away from the quality of the rifle. So our carbon barrels are a heavier carbon, and they're actually designed to be as accurate as our heavy stainless steel match barrels, and they have the same diameter, about 910 at the muzzle, 930 at the muzzle. And then also our carbon barrels, which is made by IBI, they're a taper lock rather than just a straight cut, cutting an angle, then considered like a consistent depth across, 18 inches of the barrel, then tapers back up, and then they wrap that, and they fill that big cut in with the carbon, where IBI does a taper lock. And so that's the correct way to do it, in my opinion, because it keeps the barrel more rigid. If you just thin everything out in the middle, then you've got that whip going on. You've made this 18-inch, half-inch diameter stainless portion. That's the weak spot. And so if you start thick at the back and slowly work your way forward, you've made that a lot more rigid. So if you take a stick or a piece of wood and you have it 2 inches round in diameter and you have it a half-inch round at the tip and it's a taper, it's not going to flex as much. And then they also taper lock that carbon onto it. It's not actually wrapped. And then it's compressed on there as well. So they have a way to, almost like a barrel tensioner that forces that into place, even adding more rigidity. So there's a lot of innovation behind the scenes in how carbon's made. There's a lot of differences in opinions as well. But we always try to say, okay, look, we don't make ultralight, quote unquote, hunting rifles. We make them as light as we can, but we never cross the line because we're shooters first. We want to make sure that we make them accurate, so we don't want to take 6 ounces off to save 6 ounces and then ruin the shootability or the accuracy or start taking away the potential accuracy of the gun because we went too far. And so you have difference of opinions and things like that, but that's sort of the role that we play. So to answer his question, and we went back and forth on a couple emails, and I really did appreciate the email. So thank you, Casey, for sending them out to us here. But they can be as accurate, and they aren't as rigid, and a little bit has to do on their design. So the only manufacturer that we will use personally right now is IBI when it comes to the carbon, and then we use Krieger for stainless. And the reason being is we're really critical on what's behind the scenes. We want to know everything there is to how the process is. We want to have some input on things that we think we want to do differently for our customers to do better. And then we run with it. So we know we're shooters first, and we just love to shoot, and they have to perform. So there's your question. Is carbon more rigid than stainless? Only if it's of the same weight, and then simply how they attach the carbon or how much material they remove in certain areas can add a little bit with that rigidity as well. So I hope it helps. The other thing I want to talk about here is we have some really cool meetings coming up. I'm super excited. The reason the podcast is only going, every other week is really, and not complaining, I love what I do, but I don't know, it's probably like 3 or 4 weeks now without a day off, and getting up at 5 in the morning and getting back and eating dinner at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then still working from home. We got some really cool stuff we're working on. And for me, it's exciting. Like, that's the part of the business that I love the most. I love creating things and thinking outside the box and trying to do different things. And one of the projects that we're working on is, because we make this ace, we have this piece separate of the barrel now. We can do all kinds of really cool things with the barrels that just cannot be done in traditional chambering. And we may have, and it's in R&D right now, found a way to double or triple the barrel life, make the barrel even more accurate. It's an innovation, it's a product, and it sort of plays hand in hand with the Gen 3 Ace, and just absolutely awesome. So I can't wait. We got some really cool meetings coming up. As we move forward, we'll post up some pictures and start to throw some teasers out there. And by the way, for anyone who owns one of our custom rifles, a Gen 3, this is retrofittable. So it's really, really cool. Can't say too much about it right now. It's still in R&D, but initial testing and everything says this thing's got legs. And we've got some government entities that have been interested in this project for a while and getting the final pieces put together and working prototypes and proofing it. And now it's off to the races for some additional R&D for materials. So it's really, really cool. So exciting. So the reason I bring that up isn't to brag. We're really busy and we really appreciate it. But one of the coolest things that I think, for me personally, is, when you come up with something new or when you make something new and you got that part in your hand, that is just an absolute unbelievable feeling. I wish everybody in the world would dream up something like, for example, the lady that made that spinners. I don't know if you remember from Florida, it was a big craze where, you held it between 2 fingers and you spun it around, and it became a worldwide phenomenon. Now, the sad part was she left her patents expire, and of course it became a phenomenon after her patent was gone. But still, the fact that she took the time to make that and actually make working pieces, I will guarantee it, when she put that in her hand and did it for the first time, was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And it makes you smile from ear to ear. It makes your heart and soul smile, is the best way I can put it. And I think in today's age, especially with the way businesses are, with the way that it's really a global world and global market on how people can communicate back and forth around the world and collaborate on different ideas, is number one, I think, there's a difference between creativity and innovation. And this isn't new. This has been talked about many times before, but, creativity is sitting around thinking about things and, hey, that this might work. Like, for example, when we got our little shoot house delivered up to our range, it was like a Mennonite Amish type that had built it and delivered it. And they had a trailer that was the most high-tech trailer I've ever seen in my life. So when I asked the kid, hey, you okay with backing this in here? Because it's pretty tricky. Oh, he laughed. He was like, oh, yeah, no problem. I was like, wow, okay. So when he got the trailer there, he backed the truck up. The truck got stuck. It's a big building. So as soon as he put it in reverse and it was wet, muddy, down it went. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. He got out, got a remote control, hooked it to the trailer. These tires come down, hydraulic tires in all these different directions, and basically drove the truck in reverse. Like, it pulled the truck. So he basically drove the trailer at that point with all of these wheels and all this power, electric power, and went back, sat the building exactly where it was supposed to be, and pulled the truck away. I was totally stunned. And I thought, well, that's innovation. They had a problem, and they can actually, rather than trying to drive the truck in reverse and pushing the trailer, they let the trailer drive, and heck, they could control it left, right, up, down, twisting it. It was amazing. And I thought, wow, that was awesome. And he said, yeah, his boss designed it years ago for delivering these trailers like this. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. So what happens a lot of time, though, is people have great ideas, like creativity is just thinking about it, Innovation is doing it. And gosh, I think there's so many awesome ideas and projects and parts and pieces and, advancements in all of these parts of our lives that just come out of taking something from creativity and turning it into an innovation, going out and taking that next step and just making the part, making the widget, trying it, prototyping it, finding somebody who's willing to listen to you and say, hey, that actually might work. Let's give that a go. And what's amazing if you do that, and I just want to encourage you to do that, right? What's amazing is when you have that first working part that you created out of nothing. It was an idea in your head, and it is in your hands, and you're looking at it, and you're like, that is so cool. That makes your heart and soul smile, is the best way I can put it. It's what we as humans are made for. We're meant to create things and innovate, and it's just awesome. And so if I can encourage you to do anything out there, whether it's in long-range shooting, writing music, one of my goals years ago was I was a musician and played in bands. And when I was younger, I sang and played and all this cool stuff. And I really enjoyed it. I love the art of music, and I love the sound of a guitar and amps and how tone works. And so I just like the rabbit hole you get into shooting, right? But one of my goals was to actually go into a studio and record some of my own songs that I've written. And it was just really cool, the experience, to take something that you go from just setting at 10 o'clock at night, and you're thinking about these little things and how you want them to work and the story you're trying to tell. And then all of a sudden there it is, a year later with musicians, and it's a finished product. And it just, that sensation is like, oh my God, you've made something out of nothing. That's what you do. And so I wish everybody could experience that. I wish, so I think there's a lot more, creativity out there, and there's a lot of people coming up with just really cool things. And one of the biggest negatives that come out, and I don't want to turn this to a negative podcast, but you're always going to get people to beat up on you and say, well, that's a stupid idea, or it's not going to work, or why are you wasting your time, or people in an industry that you're trying to change, just ridiculing and downplaying and saying, well, that's impossible. We can do it better. The way we have been doing it for 30 years has worked fine. Why would we mess with it now? And why would we put the money into it? And you're going to get that in any innovation that you're trying to move forward from an idea. You have to look past it. And what I want to try to encourage you, for those of you that have some really cool ideas on some different things you could do or different products you're working on, is the louder that voices or those voices are, that means you're doing something worthwhile. That means you're challenging them. If they get pretty hot and heavy that, of why you can't do it and that's bullshit, or, that's a sign that you've ticked something that this might be a challenge to them. And so I always look at it, if you get a lot of people naysaying, now don't undergo wise people. If you say, hey, I'm going to strap a rocket on my back, homemade, and light it off and fly to the moon, and someone says that's a bad idea, always take, criticism as with good intentions first and research it to make sure that you don't wind up hurting yourself. But at the same time, when you're working forward on projects and you see that there's promise here, let that stuff just be your motivator. Think of it as, if nobody's yelling and nobody's criticizing you openly online and saying why it can't be done in your way, then you're not doing something worthwhile. And so just look at it from that perspective. And the more you hear that chatter, the more you just get motivated to say, not to prove them wrong, but you're on to something. Keep working at it. So I just want to share with everybody out there, look, I've been blessed through the years of having people, for example, like Bruce at Bat Machine. I can't say thanks enough for him, even taking the time to sit down and work on some of the crazy things that we've worked on. And this is where innovation comes from, is collaboration and people getting together and saying, well, this might work, and is it going to work? Probably not. There's a chance that the whole thing's going to get scratched. If you show me someone that made something great, I'll show you something that failed at making 500 things before they found the great one, right? The light bulb, Edison said he's found 5,000 ways not to make it, right? But at the same time, you can't let that deter you. You've got to move forward. And so if you find mentors out there, or you find people that you trust and that will work with you, and those people are out there. And just want to encourage you, whether it's in music or art or, whatever industry, aviation industry, like the guy who invented the wiper blades that pause, the intermittent wiper blade, or the turn signal. All of these things were innovations for their times. And they went from somebody's head, hey, this is a pretty good idea, I could probably do this, to inventing it and making it. And I just want to share with you, that is the greatest feeling in the world, and I wish more people could experience it. Whether it becomes a success or failure doesn't matter. It's the fact that you've took something from the idea or from creativity and made it an innovation. And there's a big difference. There's a lot of creative people in the world, but it's only thoughts at that point. Innovation is actually taking your thoughts and making something out of it. And so I just want to encourage you to push forward with that. Lastly, I do want to touch base on, we did put up our 2023 shooting school dates. They're alive, limited. We're going to do about 14 or 15 classes. We did pull a lot of our other classes because our time is being extremely consumed with some new products that we're working on and some new innovations in the background. And it's just requiring for us to pull. So even the podcast might be every other week, and we got some pretty cool subjects coming up here. We did finish some reloading classes, what set off some ideas on what I would like to talk about here, maybe some advanced hand loading and things that we had experienced here just with customers' questions. And then I am looking forward to going out and reaching out to some of the people in the industry, innovators, and bring them on the podcast and talk about some of the things and how they discovered them and how they put it in the process and made something out of nothing, grew a business or put a product on the market that never existed before. So that's going to be pretty exciting as well. So this podcast is going to be a little short. Before we finish it up, I do want to say thanks to TriggerTech. Also, they're a proud sponsor of the show. We put them in all of our custom rifles here. They're a safe trigger. They're a simple trigger to install, user-friendly. You can adjust the pull weight yourself at home. No specific gunsmithing required. And they make them for a lot of different makes and models. So it's a great upgrade for a rifle, custom or otherwise. So you can stop over to triggertech.com. That's triggertech.com today. So thank you so much for taking the time to tune in to the podcast. We will be offline for next week and then back on the following week. And then as fall comes, we'll go back into a regular weekly basis. And as soon as we can release some information about what we're working on here and get some more data out there, we will. And I'll be actually out this afternoon shooting one of the prototypes again. We were shooting it yesterday. And I got to say, I was so excited to come in this morning and record this podcast, is just to share with you that I wish more and more people get the chance to experience playing in innovation and creating new products and just experiencing that feeling. So I encourage you to do it. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here at the podcast. We really appreciate it. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you're listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.